Okay, everybody, have a good one. I am going to show you how to do a presentation for your training in the English class. And before starting to show you how I do my presentation, there are quick things you need to know. The first thing you need to know when you do your presentation is that students need to go from what they know to what they don't know. Okay, you are going to see what I'm talking about in a couple of minutes. You have to follow a pattern. It's important to follow a pattern, and this pattern goes with the teacher showing the pattern. After teacher showing the pattern, then students prepare statements with the teacher, and finally the students prepare these statements by themselves. Whenever you teach in this pattern, you have to teach the pattern in affirmative, negative, and yes, no questions. For example, here I'm teaching the passive voice, and this has to be the pattern that you're going to be teaching. You have to show active voice and the passive voice, and the passive voice must include the formula that you can see here. For example, this formula contains, the passive voice formula is am/are plus the past participle form of the verb. And then you start, they speak English here. Can you see? Active voice. And now you go with passive voice. English is spoken here. Active voice, he speaks English. Passive voice, English is spoken by him. Whenever you're doing your presentation on the planning sheet, you have to be very specific. For example, look at this. It says, teacher will write on the board the following questions. These questions are what the students know, and I wrote some ideas. For example, number 3, extreme weather has caused lots of droughts in Guatemala. Then, teacher provides the formula for passive voice. That's important. You as a teacher need to include in your presentation the formula that you are going to be using. Object plus is plus the verb and past participle plus the complement. And then, from what they know, active voice, then you take those verbs, those statements, into passive voice. For example, look at number 3 here. Extreme weather has caused lots of droughts in Guatemala. That's what I say in active voice. Now, I change. Lots of droughts in Guatemala are caused by extreme weather. And I emphasize what I told you. Look at this. Here it says, teacher shows how to change active into passive. Yeah? So teacher does it first. Then I go and students in the middle of my examples help me. It says, now teacher asks students to help him to change active into passive, number 3 and number 4. And finally, okay, you can see here, it says, now teacher lets students do it by themselves. And now I am going to show you a short video I have prepared where I explained these 3 steps. So before showing you the video, don't forget, go from what students know to what they don't know. Do it by patterns, and the pattern is teacher prepares statements first. Then students prepare statements by with the teacher. And finally, students prepare the statements by themselves. Now look at the video and tell me if you can see this pattern, if you can see from known to unknown, and if you can see these 3 steps.
Okay, so the question is, how is Earth changing? Girls, how is Earth changing? Give me some ideas. How is Earth changing?
Okay, if you notice here, my students are giving me some sentences in active voice. According to the question that I'm asking, how is Earth changing? Let's continue listening to what they say.
Excuse me? Okay. You think it okay? So deforestation takes place. Okay.
I'm
What
going
else?
to go forward a little bit if I can.
Okay. Blazers. Okay, Yamaka, that's the word. Blazers in the forest. Very good. Okay. Another. One more thing. How is Earth changing? Okay.
Notice how I am going to start showing them how those active sentences go into passive sentences after this last example they give me.
Now look. Okay. Now I'm going to change. Look at this. I say the streets. Right here. The streets. Now, streets singular or plural?
If you notice, I am explaining the structure. They haven't seen the structure yet, but I am asking them questions, but I am doing the passive structure by myself. They only see it.
ED, correct. Littered, good. Because it's a past participle. The streets are littered, and now I include this word. I say, who does the action? People. So I say you. By, okay, people. If I want, I can omit by people. I can say the streets are littered. Finished. So what is the structure? The streets.
Notice how I explained the structure
I'm gonna write it here.
and I write it down.
Objects. Plus verb be is or are plus the verb in past participle plus the complement. Okay? Now, tell me, for example, let's go with this one. People make blazers in the forest.
You are going to listen right now that I use the word help me to ask students to help me doing the other two examples. Yeah. Look at this how they help me. And finally, look how they do the rest of the examples by themselves.
Okay? Now, tell me, for example, let's go with this one. People make blazers in the forest. What is the object? It's actually is on this. Blazes in the forest. So I'm gonna write it here. Blazers. Tell me please, blazers in the forest.
Notice that they made a mistake. They were not completely sure. But this is the great thing about doing this because they can see their mistakes, and then whenever they have to do it by themselves, they can do it without any issue.
Make. What is the verb in past participle? It's yes, it's be. Made. Yes. Made. Blazes in the forest are made. Finished. If you want the complement, what is the complement? By people. Correct. Now, please prepare the last one. Prepare number 3. Only you.
Can you see? This is the moment when I ask them to do it by themselves. All right. So now, can you see all the overview of your presentation? Were you able to see the known to the unknown? Were you able to see the pattern? Yes, the formula. Were you able to see how the teacher prepares the statement? Then how the students prepare statements with the teacher? And finally, how students prepare the statements by themselves? Well, so now let's continue. To end up or to wrap up your presentation, okay, there is something that is called the follow-up. What is the follow-up? It's a quick and dynamic activity to check if your students are understanding. This is usually done through a game or through a questionnaire. I'm sorry about this mistake here. Through a questionnaire, and it usually works in pairs. All right. How you see it in the planning, I'm gonna show you. Okay, so here is my planning. You can see, and this is what I did. Yeah, the questions, then how I changed them into passive voice, and finally the follow-up. Look, it says teacher will give in slips of paper or writing on the board the following active statements, and then students will have a competition where they change active into passive. And then I have a couple of examples here. It says people eat tamales in Guatemala, English drink tea in the UK, and so on. Here it says that they will give in slips of paper the following active statements. I didn't do it, as you can see, in slips of paper, but I wrote myself these statements, and they were able to work in pairs and change them into passive voice. So now I'm gonna show you, and you are going to be able to see how I did this activity. Once again, is the follow-up, and the purpose of the follow-up is to check students' understanding.
The statements, and you write it in affirmative, negative, and question. Okay? When you finish, you say finished. Alright? Are you ready? So don't forget, affirmative, negative, and question in pairs. Okay, and here it goes. People eat tamales in Guatemala. Affirmative, negative, and question. Don't forget, objects, verb be, past participle, and complement. People eat tamales in Guatemala.